Welcome back to the GEICO One Nation of Gamers EU Open Qualifier number 3. We are headed into the third place match. Unfortunately for Tyroz and RDU, their chance of qualifying directly for the future tournament is over, but they can still get some GEICO points, still get a little money in their pocket, and potentially qualify through the point system ladder we have going on. But with me is Hot Form, so how you doing?
Oh, pretty good. I mean, it's a tough road for these players. They've fought a lot of matches to get here, so surely they don't want to go home empty-handed. Actually, winning this match gets you the GEICO points, which at the end, after all of the qualifiers, the people with the most GEICO points for each region get to have the sponsorship trip to PAX as well. So there is actually quite a bit that they want to accomplish from this match.
Yeah. For these players that are basically, not as known, I mean, RDU obviously known, but still out there playing all these opens, still grinding, and these players that really want to get to those lands, really want to get themselves out there, they can play in all these tournaments, try to rack up those points, and if you're dedicated enough and skilled enough, you'll get there at the end. Like you said, the top two from each region actually just get a direct invite to the LAN. So we're going to start in game one, and it's going to be Aggro Paladin versus Rogue. What do you think of this matchup?
Yeah, these are really different classes being played now, so probably I would give a little advantage to the Paladin. In my opinion, the Rogue has really good mechanics to kind of shut down the board, and their hero power is good, but the Rogue doesn't have a lot of time to be aggressive. They're going to have to turn it around on turn 6 or 7. You're looking for like a really big amount of damage to probably take it back.
Yeah.
Would you
Double Leopard Home, definitely one of the more aggressive starts in the game. And he basically can't use this backstab right now. Needs to save it to combo with that SI. But he will actually retake board this next turn. He's just going to have to take 10 damage to do so.
What do you think the important cards for the Rogue are in this match?
Well, he had the backstab and the SI, which are obviously very good for taking over the board early. But also, he's going to need something like a Blade Flurry or a Fan of Knives. Obviously, we're going to see Muster for battle this very next turn, so gonna have to find a way to deal with the massive amount of one-health creatures coming out from the Paladin, as they really just aren't going to stop coming. And if he can't take over the board, we saw RDU's deck had cards like Defender of Argus. He's got the Blessing of Kings in hand. So he's got cards that when he has stuff that sticks, he can punish you for that. So wouldn't even be surprised to see that Blessing of Kings this turn. But gonna go with Consecration. Try to control the Rogue's board even.
I guess when you see the Rogue trade with the SI agent, you know that he has a hand he wants to be defensive with, and now if he trades with the Shredder would just die, so...
Yeah, I think it's really important that RDU went face with the weapon. A lot of players would see this as a pretty good trade. You know, you get to kill off a minion with your health. You don't lose much damage, but you're basically giving your opponent another attack anyway with the Shredder pop. It could be something like a taunt or a relevant healing card, and you do miss that 1 damage, which playing as this aggressive Paladin deck, sometimes 1 damage makes all the difference. So really like how aggressive RDU is being here.
Yeah, I agree that giving him the extra attack is something you really don't want to do. You want to be maximizing every little bit you can in this match, because the early game is such a huge deal for the Paladin.
Yeah, and without that Fan of Knives or Blade Flurry, Tyroz is going to take a lot of damage overall from those 1/1s. And of course, the Light's Justice is actually a 4 damage weapon, very often overlooked, but really powerful weapon if you get off all 4 charges. So, Muster for battle, pretty much the MVP so far, and Tyroz is already going to be going down to 6. We know he plays Healbot, but he's going to have to find that really quick here.
Oh.
Okay.
Wow.
He probably can't squeeze it in this turn, though, as he really needs to deal with the 5/5.
Yeah.
I don't think he can be too scared this turn, and Healbot right now. You probably have to wait a turn.
It's
The
still
odds,
a
odds
pretty
you're dead are
awkward turn.
low. Yeah, it is for sure. I think I'd like to see Deadly Poison, eviscerate the 5/5, trade in your 2/3, and trade into the 2/1 with your teacher. That gets you some 1/1s to control the board for later. You've already seen a consecration, and saves your life total. You go to 14 next turn. Paladin's running low on stuff. It also dumps your hand as much as possible, which is pretty important for playing around Divine Favor. But I think he's just a little too scared, and he's going to go with just that heal bot and trade twice. Oh, that feels bad.
I mean, I can't blame him for that play there. I agreed with you that he probably needed to be a little greedier because, like, at some point he needs to try to establish the board, and now he's still going to keep losing this health. But it is obviously, like, there's a lot of ways to die to aggression when you're at 6 HP, so probably the safer play.
Yeah. It's gonna not take much of a risk, and I mean, it basically ends up with enabling that Defender of Argus from RDU's top deck, I believe, and now, I mean, he's facing down more pressure. He doesn't have control of the board, and he's going to have to use those spells to control the board anyway, so pretty rough spot to be in if you're Tyraz here. Already popped his heal, so he could clear the entire board, but that wouldn't develop anything. And it would also, he'd take 2 damage.
Yeah. Like, clearing the board has a lot of merits here because the Paladin gets most of their buffs from creatures that are already active.
Right. If there was another Blessing of Kings here, he'd be punching himself for leaving that defender behind. And for RDU, that's actually 12 damage over the next 2 turns with that top deck True Silvers. So, and with an Ironbeak Owl to bust through any taunts, there's really not much of a chance for Tyraz. I could see something like I'd like to see the South Sea here, I think. But I guess with the Ironbeak Owl, it's not a huge deal if you don't. This also makes Tyraz think maybe I'm not dead, maybe I can just go for a greedy play. I don't think it matters here. He doesn't really have an alternative. So,
well, I think technically the best play is to kill his own Shredder and get a Vitality totem.
Right, so by holding the South Sea back, it tells, like, if he had played the South Sea, Tyraz would eviscerate his own Shredder this turn, because that's his only way to win.
True.
But because RDU's one off, seemingly, he doesn't go for that desperation play. And with the Owl, RDU basically gets that extra, maybe like 1 to 2 win percentage here, had he not, had things gone perfectly wrong. But we actually did see that Arcane Golem at the very end there, so you were right. Some extra chargers in that Aggro Paladin. Pretty aggressive deck.
Yeah, I like that. I like the Arcane Golem a lot, because you have all those like attack buffs, but sometimes the opponent clears the board, so you just want to have the extra charge. I don't know. I think you would be a little frustrated with that game as Tyraz, because you did get the heal bot, and yet you still lost by like quite a large margin. But maybe you just knew once those were picked, like, all right, I might not win this one. So
yeah, I think the biggest deal was he didn't really draw Blade Flurry or Fan of Knives, Fan of Knives being preferable. One of the few cards that really counters Muster for battle. And RDU just basically drew his cards in the correct order finally. He was struggling to do that last match, but really just controlled the board. He actually got to get off a Defender of Argus on 2 targets. He got to use Blessing of Kings for the maximum damage. His opponent had to trade super inefficiently into it. So RDU's deck just worked perfectly that last game, and Tyraz's draw had nothing going for him.
Yeah, RDU had the double Lepronome opening as well, which put Tyraz to like 20
that
on turn 3.
That thing did 10 damage, yeah.
So, Rogue versus Patron. I mean, this is one of the better matchups against Patron to be a Rogue. It would be nice to see Tyraz take this one, I think, and even up the series. Yeah,
Tyraz, went down 0-2 in his first series. Never a great place to be. If he goes down 0-2 again, probably not a great mindset to be in, but he did almost come back last series, so... And of course, this game could go either way. From the patron side of things, I think RDU is going to be going for more of an OTK way of winning this game, really trying to control the board up until then. And for the Rogue, just a lot of pressure, essentially. And he's going to even start off that pressure by just getting out as many 1-1s as possible.
I mean, I'm really surprised to see him prep there. He prevents the double armor smith synergy, which the double armor smith stacks up armor really fast. But
yeah.
I mean, you prepped to kill a 1/4 that's not really threatening you.
Yeah. And it also just not only using the prep, but using an eviscerate. The double armor smith opening from RDU is a lot more punishing than it seems, because it denies a lot of the damage from Tyraz. He's basically having to trade. Like you said, the armor can get out of control, so you have to be a little aware of that. And as the Rogue, you just want to push damage to the face. Trading is not where you want to be.
This is like a situation where if Tyraz, or if RDU wanted to take the risk and just drop the patron and attack, it would actually pay off. But it's rare you actually want to make that play, especially with only the patron in your hand. So you're thinking, okay, if it dies to something, then suddenly I have nothing left to push damage with later.
Yeah, I feel like he could afford to maybe just play the patron, especially depending on what he draws, if he can draw any more draw cards to keep himself going. I think if he got an Acolyte, he'd obviously just go for the draw with that. But
I hadn't noticed the Shield Slam last time RDU played this deck.
yeah, he's playing the slower version, kind of being popularized among players. Has Unstable Ghoul and Shield Block Shield Slam in it, so sports a much better win percentage against aggressive decks, which sort of includes Rogue. It lets you just keep a higher life total and get more cycle going as you try to draw into that OTK combo. And I think that Inner Rage is actually such an interesting top deck, because, like you were talking about, he's thinking, I could play the patron, and now he's thinking it even more. He's like, what if he doesn't have, a flurry combo? What if I just win? And that's a tempting thought. A really tempting thought.
It's good. He went for it. I mean, I think a lot of players would hold back there and try to wait it out. They think, all right, I have a slam. I could maybe draw into something good, like an Emperor later.
Yeah.
But
so a Deadly Poison would be the draw for Tyraz here to set up that Blade Flurry. Ooh, and he's one turn off playing the Tinkers into a Blade Flurry.
That one turn makes a really big difference, because he's going to take 14 damage.
Ouch. Really bad here. He does have the heal bot to sort of stabilize later, but he's essentially going to have to rely on RDU kind of drawing dead throughout these next few turns. If RDU can really draw more gas, then things get out of hand really quickly for Tyraz.
You can slam your own patron next turn to draw a card and spawn another patron. I mean,
yeah. I mean, we know that there's going to be an oil flurry, but when you're already here and you don't see the flurry come out, there is part of you that's like, oh, he doesn't have the flurry. Like, let's make more patrons.
Well, yeah, and I mean, as RDU, the fact that he wrote this turn and he didn't kill your patrons, you're in a much better mood than you were last turn, panicking on if he would have it or not.
It's a really interesting play. He decided not to play that Azure Drake even. Didn't cycle it, which is pretty strange, I think.
Yeah.
It would save you some health, potentially. With the Fiery War Axe, it'd probably just get slammed into Fiery War Axe, but if your opponent would have to trade in a patron, that you're happy with that.
Yeah, I'm really surprised he didn't play it there. I mean, there's very few disadvantages to putting the creature down. It had 4 health, so it would be tough to kill with the patrons. RDU doesn't have a lot of cards. Probably worst case is it gets maybe executed.
I think this even telegraphs the flurry even more so than just playing the Drake. Pretty
Oh, the face.
interesting. Pretty interesting that RDU decided not to armor up as well. The shield slam is going to become kind of worse and worse because he's deciding not to armor. But he does have all the initiative in the world because Tyros has to spend his entire turn just to clear the board.
I mean, to me, you could have at least played the oil last turn. You already telegraphed. The only answer is flurry.
Right. It was really interesting that he just decided to play nothing. He just did 1 damage on turn 5, and that was it. But like I said, his new game plan was kind of hoping RDU drew dead. RDU is drawn dead.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that actually looks pretty good for Tyros now. He has the heal bot, and RDU just armors and passes.
Yeah, and I would expect to see just the heal bot from Tyros this turn. I'd like to see probably Lotheb instead. You're not under much immediate threat. Gromish in a rage would kill you, but with Lotheb, that's not possible. So I definitely like this more aggressive play. We saw him be really defensive with the heal bot in game 1. I really like to see him kind of taking a more aggressive line this game.
Yeah, I like that risk as well. That's going to pay off a lot too, having the bigger creature out, because the heal bot would just die to the weapon, so he would still have nothing on the board.
Yep.
Did he just pass again?
He could. I mean, he'd have to trade his face and to execute it. So yeah, he just decides to pass, and
Now your armor's
now's the
gone.
turn that comes. The heal bot comes out, and for you, that's not good to see. That's basically the one card you were afraid of.
Yeah, so he lost all his armor now too, and that means Lotheb is. Oh,
Oh
the
wow!
shield block.
Shield block off the top though is probably one of the best draws in his deck. So
Yeah, it lets him clear the board, and now he's got enough health too. He's probably got like 3 more turns at least until he's looking at dying. Gets to use the Azure Drake that he was saving before.
yeah, so I mean, saving the Azure Drake did allow him to develop a 4/4, and now it's basically a safe 4/4, whereas earlier would have just died immediately. Emperor, it's not the worst for RDU, but it's really not that amazing actually. The cost reduction obviously doesn't mean anything, and as a 5/5 body, it's basically just going to get dealt with. I think there's even the option to sap here. You don't care about the cost reduction at this point. It's usually pretty counterintuitive to sap the Emperor because you don't want to give the Patron 2 activations of it.
Yeah.
But I think saving that 5 damage Eviscerate could have potentially set him up for a better lethal chance next turn. As
I guess
he still has
thinking
lethal anyway. But like, if one of his minions gets answered, which it probably will through this execute, then probably be kicking himself for using up that Eviscerate.
Acolyte's a pretty good draw. At least he's going to get something for his efforts this turn.
It's the cycle, so there's Warsong. The one thing he was really missing though was the Despite, and he's actually going to look for it right now. He still gets 2 more draws to get it, so I really like the extra cycling here. Oh, and he gets the Despite! And honestly, that, barring a top deck from Tyros, might do it.
Using the Eviscerate instead of...
Oh, but that's
Sap
lethal!
now.
The Deadly's lethal.
Is it?
Oh,
Yes.
man.
Wow.
No justice. So Tyrod's going to take the game anyway with exact lethal off the top. Really could have been regretting that Eviscerate play, but instead, we'll tie up the series 1-1 and get that rogue out of the way. So, like you said, makes you feel better when the series is tied 1-1 instead of down 0-2.
That's so heartbreaking for RDU. Like, he took the risk, he took the correct risk early on, and then the oil was drawn, so it allowed Tyros to stay alive into the top deck. Exact lethal just after RDU like saw his win in front of him.
Yeah, the Despite was such a tease. It's like, you did it! You drew the card. That was it. No. So 1-1, and both players kind of got. Well, I guess RDU still has Druid, which is sort of unorthodox, but Warlock and Warrior left for Tyra is pretty standard. He does have that Demon Zoo deck we saw. RDU having, that Druid deck. We know it has 2 Innervates. That's for sure.
2 Innervates and Dr. Boom.
2 Innervates and Dr. Boom. That's the list he went for. But instead, we're just going to see that Patron Mirror match. Obviously, pretty common matchup in these tournaments where almost everyone's bringing Patron. In fact, in these finals, all players have Patron. So we do see Harrison Jones from Tyraz, though, so a bit of tech for the mirror matchup.
I didn't see. Did he actually keep that in his mulligan?
I don't think he did, actually. Looked like he drew into it off the mulligan.
It's it's a reasonable card to keep in the mulligan because you know that your opponent's going to use weapons, but then you also would rather just have your own combo first, I think. So
yeah,
I'm not sure if you would.
There are times where your opponent can get off the full combo without needing a weapon. We've seen Emperor into Patron and Enraged Whirlwind being a really common way of getting out the combo. You don't really need the Despite, but we've also saw that one game where I believe it was Pavel just threw out the 2-charge Despite and passed, and a Harrison really would have punished that. So.
Yeah. I found their picks for this match pretty interesting. If you had picked, because there's the Zoo Warlock and the Druid left, and the Patron Warrior is strong against both of those decks, but leaving it until the end, it might mean that you match up your Druid against the Warlock, which would be a much worse match than having the Druid versus the Warrior.
Yeah, there's definitely, a lot of intricacies to the matchups. A lot less pick strategy than there was in last year with Standing, the old format, but kind of there can be some mind games these players do if you know your opponent. So, like, I don't think RDU really knows Tyraz, but Tyraz might know RDU, so maybe kind of study how they've picked in the past, but...
Maybe they both just really want this game, so they picked Warrior because they know Warrior's going to have a chance to win.
Warrior's a good deck. So double frothing with the War Song from Tyraz definitely enables like some high damage possibilities later, but obviously you'd much rather have kind of the Patron combo in this matchup, I think. And speaking of the Patron, are you actually the first person to draw it?
Yeah, it might be a while till we see a Patron hit the board, though. There's just not a lot of synergy there. Neither player has Emperor, so you can't do it early. Neither player has Death Bite.
It's pretty weird. Tyraz is like hoping that RDU draws Death Bite. With the Harrison waiting, he's like, "Come on, play Death Bite." But Fiery War Axe, pretty good pickup from Tyraz. But
wait, why did he trade the Armor Smith when the Loot Hoarder would die to the Unstable Ghoul Whirlwind anyways?
Not too sure. There's not really many decks running Owl, and even then I'm not sure you'd want to silence the Unstable Ghoul. It's a pretty interesting play there. It does force out an Axe that your opponent hasn't had. So with the Loot Hoarder on board, he could just directly trade into the Unstable Ghoul.
Yeah, I guess he was hoping that the Ghoul would survive, and then he could do the Patron.
Then you can Patron Whirlwind.
Yeah.
Yeah, get tons of draw, tons of Patrons. And there's going to be the Execute on the Acolyte just to deny another draw. So Acolyte does get one draw ultimately.
I think if you were a Tyraz, you could actually identify a bit of that synergy there by seeing him run the Armor Smith in, because otherwise it's such an unusual play to protect your Ghoul. You might expect that there's a Patron in hand.
Yeah. So RDU is just going to start cycling his cards, just cycles Battle Rage for 1. And even though there's a Harrison, I think that Deathbite was still a good draw. It's going to get Harrisoned, but... He really did need something to deal with that frothing, or else it could have gotten really out of control.
Yeah. So the Harrison really turns the game here, though. Without being able to do that, RDU would be set up to kill a creature and get 4 patrons. And now he's not able to kill a creature, and there's going to be no patrons hitting the board.
Yeah, the Armor Smith, though, interestingly, might turn into a liability going into turn 8 and onward, where your opponent can do the Warsong Patron combo and basically just spawn free 3/3s off of anything with less than 3 attack. And Tyraz really doesn't have a way to kill off his own Armor Smith here. But oh wow, speaking of the Warsong Patron combo, that's the combo.
Yeah.
And I'd be surprised to see anything other than that this turn.
That was a pretty big risk by RDU to play both of his 1-attack creatures onto turn 8.
Right into turn 8, yeah. Maybe just identifying he needs to take a risk to win this game, but the risk will not pay off.
Gets a exactly full board, so there is some potential with a double whirlwind that...
Wow, I'm surprised he chose not to spawn another 3/3. It seems like just a mistake.
No, I mean, I guess he did that exactly to play around the fact that...
Yeah, it doesn't fill up your board, yeah. So it's not directly a mistake. There is some merit to not filling your board with patrons. This sort of plays around the whirlwinds. And RU is going to combo right back, but it's not going to get nearly as many patrons. And also, I think his patrons are going to get answered by the patrons from Tyraz.
Everybody is certainly getting in here.
Everyone is getting in here, man.
So he can get Tyraz down to 1 patron. And then Tyron does have another... I was going to leave 2 patrons. He does have the other Warsong.
Yeah, is this actually lethal from Tyraz here, though? I think it is. With Warsong Frothing Double Whirlwind, that has to be lethal.
Yeah, that is a huge amount of damage because there's patrons on the other side of the board.
He has 9. He gets more patrons. So that's 15. He just needs 5 from the Frothing. This is just lethal with 1 Whirlwind, even.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to get in. Oh, man. What a ridiculous matchup.
I think the Harrison really showed its strength here. The Harrison was the thing that switched the game around from RDU having just the best setup possible into suddenly he's not able to even play his patron on curve anymore.
Yeah, if the Harrison wasn't there, RDU could have been the first player to go off, and what we've been seeing as a common trend in that matchup is the player that gets their patrons out first usually wins. We have seen some pretty crazy, not in this tournament particularly, but there have been some crazy kind of reverse patrons where they make their patrons and then you make yours and yours end up winning out. But usually the first player gets the better end of the deal. So now Tyraz actually has a lead, and he just needs to pick up 1 win with this Zoo to take home 3rd place in this qualifier.
So, I mean, I think the RDU's Patron Warrior has a good chance to beat the Zoo, although personally I don't find the Shield Slam variant nearly as effective against the aggro decks, just because Shield Slam can be a really slow card that's meant to kill bigger creatures. But the Druid match, which he's chosen here, is definitely going to be the harder one, because the Zoo has a bit of favor.
Kind of goes to more of a mentality kind of question. He decides to take the hard road first and thinking, okay, if I'm going to win, I have to win with this. So let's get this out of the way. If he gets it out of the way, he gets to go into Game 5 feeling a little better, knowing he has a slightly better matchup.
And we have Void Caller into Mal'Ganis in Tyraz's hand right now.
Yeah, Artie is really... He doesn't know it, but he's really going to want to see a big game hunter pretty soon.
It's really interesting he didn't play the Flame Imp there. Having cards is useful, but you know that you want to get Mal'Ganis out of the Void Caller.
Yeah, and really awkward just hands here for Tyraz, and actually the way the cards went, he actually made inefficient plays. Obviously, it's not a misplay because you don't know what cards are on the top of your deck, but he floats a mana this turn, and he could have just played the Flame Imp last turn and gotten 3 more damage, like you said, but...
Also, to me, if you drew into Imp Gang Boss, you want to play the Gang Boss, but then suddenly you would run the risk of still having a Flame Imp in your hand when you play the Void Caller.
Yeah, so this Void Caller is... Oh, man. He could just get out, and he can silence the Shredder. So he can get out that Mal'Ganis for free this turn, and there's no answer from RDU.
The ever-present fear of the big game fun killer, though.
Yeah.
If that hits the board, right, then you have nothing. You have an owl on the board, and he has a stronger creature than you, so...
Yeah, the big game hunter is definitely a concern. But we know it's not there, so unless RDU can top deck, this game might just end.
Yeah, it's like a 1 in 21 top deck or something. It's really near the beginning still.
Yep. Oh, man. Rough matches for RDU today, man. Can he do it? Nope.
I mean, he's
just gonna have to taunt up, yeah. He's not dead, but oh, jeez, is he dead? I think he might be dead. Yeah, I think that might end it. Unless Tyroz is blissfully ignorant of the implosion interaction with Mal'Ganis.
If he had played the swipe last turn, then he would take 9, but he was at 28. And it meant that he could at least Force of Nature or True to the Claw to kill the Mal'Ganis. But yeah, playing the creature and then getting Implosion, even though it was only 2 damage, suddenly there's Imps on the board, getting buffed by Mal'Ganis, and you take the 9.
So he has one more draw for the big game hunter to not lose on the spot. And that's not it. He's staring down 15.
And Dr. Boom now.
Jeez.
No BGH and 2 BGH-able characters.
Oh, man. Really rough game for RDU. Rough matches for him today.
Is he not going to play Dr. Boom? Surely you play Dr. Boom.
Come on, it's turn 7. Dr. Boom is green. You know your opponent doesn't have Big Game Hunter.
Yeah.
Now here's the real question. If you top deck Big Game Hunter, do you BGH Boom or Mal'Ganis? Before you press the concede button, of course, yeah.
Yeah. So you could draw, like, Nourish into Innervate double BGH? No.
Naturalize Hype?
Wait, he killed the Emperor? Interesting.
Alright, well, RDU is going to see one more draw before calling it quits, and Tyroz will take the series 3-1, looking much more dominant than he did last series.
Yeah.
So, takes home some money, gets himself a few more GEICO points. Again, really important to qualify for the finals, top 2 in the region qualify for PAX. And for viewers out there, if you want to qualify, there are actually open tournaments run more than weekly for both servers, so it's Europe and North America. You can check out when they're happening at liquidhearth.com. And again, anyone's open to play in those. They're run really great. But for now, we're just going to take a break before heading into the grand finals between Pavel and Unskiller to see who will get the qualification into the featured tournament. Stay tuned.